So good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, wherever, depending where you are. I would like to say that I will speak on, my speech will be a little bit different because I didn't prepare any in-depth analysis, but I wanted to suggest that we can read some text instead and comment on it, if possible, with Professor Dubянskие words. This conference was called a reading, so I thought that a reading might be also interesting somehow. And I remember always the professor, when meeting Professor Dubянskие, he was always at the very beginning asking me, what are you reading now? So I think that this reading and Professor Dubянskие will be always in my mind together. There's the need of reading something. Yeah? So, and because the organizers agreed for that, so they should be blamed, not me, that we will read and not analyze deeply some things. Well, I hope I can share the screen with the green bottom, I think. And I think it should be seen. My Tirumaṅkaiyāḻvār Tirunaṟaiyūr, yes? I hope. Now is it okay? Can I?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. Thank you. Because all these things are new to us, so I don't know whether it is correctly done. So let us start. Tirumaṅkaiyāḻvār belonged to most probably 9th century. And he's one of the 12 Alvars, of the poets of the Bhakti period, whom Tamil tradition recognizes as saints. So this is not only poetical, his works are not only poetical, but also they have religious meanings for the believers. And in his hymns, he praises Vishnu and the holy places, which are called Divya Desam, in which God resides. And Tamil Vaiṣṇava tradition recognizes 108 these Divya Desams that the Alvars were singing about. So Tirunaṛaiyūr is one of such places. At present, it is known under the name Naćiyar, and it is a rather small town situated near Kumbakonam in the center part of Tamil Nadu. So we have the map here from Google Maps. This is in Polish, the name, but here you can see there's Chennai, the Madurai, and in between we have the Kumbakonam, and this Tirunaṛaiyūr is just, I don't know, 10 kilometers from the Kumbakonam. The form of Vishnu worship in the temple is Srinivasa Perumal, who is also known as Tirunaṛaiyūr Nambi. So that's the Lord of Tirunaṛaiyūr. And the goddess is Vāļļavallī. So we can see the picture of Vishnu with his wife and the big Kalgaruda behind. This is the picture just which is sold in the shops just close to the temple. Yes, Shri Vāļļavallī and Srinivasa Perumal. Okay. Periya Tirumali, it is the most important work of Tirumaṅkaiyāḻvār. In that work, he devoted 10 hymns to this place. And he mentioned also Tirunaṛaiyūr in his other works, mainly Periya Tirumāḍal. So the hymns or the poems in Periya Tirumali are in the form of Tirumali, as the title suggests, which is the Tirumali, which is a poem that generally consists of 10 stanzas called pasurams. And these stanzas are rather loosely connected with each other, but they share a common refrain and mention the same God's name, and usually the same place name where the God is to be met. So, and the last or the 10th stanza is typically the Palashruti, which is not closely related with the main subject of the hymn. And the Tirunaṛaiyūr, this hymns in total consists of 100 stanzas. There are 10 hymns, each hymn has 10 stanzas. And what is interesting that Tirunaṛaiyūr is the place to which, apart from Tirunaṛaiyūr, Tirumaṅkaiyāḻvār devoted the largest number of hymns in his period Tirumuli, because the other places are mentioned in 1, 2, 3 hymns, and this Tirunaṛaiyūr, he got 10 hymns. So it is interesting to see why, maybe also. So, so for sure that Tirunaṛaiyūr must have been a unique place for the poet. We can just think why, but we don't know exactly why. Hagiographies, the medieval hagiographies, they say that we can read in them that Tirunaṛaiyūr was the place of Tirumaṅkaiyāḻvār's Vaiṣṇava initiation, where the ritual, this ritual of Panchasamskara was performed for him. So we can understand that this place somehow was close to him because of his personal experiences and his personal life and beliefs and so on. The name of this, the town or the place, can be translated the holy town or place of fragrance, because the nare can mean honey or toddy, and in most cases the fragrance or incense. And in Sanskrit sources it is known as Shrimat Sugandha Giri or Sugandha Vanam. So the Sugandha is also in Sanskrit the nice smell or something like that, town of nice fragrance. And it's a sweet smell of honey which gave name to this place, is associated with the presence of a god or the Vishnu who resides in this place. So in many stanzas in the period Tirumuli, the poet calls Vishnu honey, to be honey. And Vishnu is also, as we know, decorated with beautiful garlands of fragrant flowers and tulsi plant, in which one can hear the sounds of bees collecting nectar. So the fragrance and the most specifically the sweet smell of honey that is felt in that place indicates that Vishnu resides there permanently. It means that Tirunaṛaiyūr is not an ordinary place, but it is a place of God's residence, and that is just a paradise or the heaven on earth, we can say. Those who want to reach God and thus gain liberation, which is Tamil Vaiṣṇava or mocham from Sanskrit moksha, from the fetters of the world, they should undertake a pilgrimage to this holy place of Tirunaṛaiyūr. So I wanted to read the first poem in this in the list, the Tirumoli 6/4, which belongs to the group, we can say, messenger poems, but not exactly, but it has some characteristics of this kind of poems, this messenger poems. Because the poet asks his own heart to awake, and then he wants to go to worship Vishnu in Tirunaṛaiyūr. In the first part of each stanza, the poet addresses his heart, and in the second half, he mentions the city of Tirunaṛaiyūr. So we will read only the second part, which is telling about the, I have written city, but rather place would be better word. And I give also the English translation by Ram Bharati. These translations are not good at all, but I couldn't find anything else. So if you know any other translation in English of Priya Tirumoli, please let me know. And this English is not my, the language that I know the best. I will not give my own translation by now, maybe later. So we can see the first stanza, the part dealing with the Tirunaṛaiyūr, where we can read O heart, let us go to the Lord, who became the mountain, the sky, the Vedas, the sacrifice. He resides in Naṛaiyūr and offer worship. And interestingly, the object of his worship is the town itself and not Vishnu, because the one poet, he says, writes my heart, this year in Ninjame, Naṛaiyūr nam toludum. We will worship Naṛaiyūr, Naṛaiyūr nam toludum. So the commentary reads that the zero suffix after the city name is actually the accusative case. So the poet apparently intends to worship the town itself. The zero suffix can also be understood as an indicator of a locative case, meaning thus we will worship in Naṛaiyūr. But however, I don't think it is the case here, because it is often seen in the period Tirumuli that the poet identifies the place with the god himself, of the Vishnu. So we can understand here Naṛaiyūr as a kind of earthly embodiment of Vishnu. Yes, we will worship Vishnu, but we will do it by worshiping the place, which is Vishnu himself. And this phrase serves as a refrain. This Yelenenjame Naṛaiyūr nam toludum is a kind of refrain, and it appears at the end of each stanza. And the place of the Naṛaiyūr is described as follows. Naṛaiyūr, where dwells he who was the sky, the mountain, the Vedas, and sacrifice, as we read. So it is stressed that Vishnu has chosen his place to live in it, because the verb nannu, to reside, to live, is also used there. So from the first stanza about the Tirunaṛaiyūr, we only know that this is the place where Vishnu lives. In the second stanza, we can read in Rambharati translation, O heart, let us go to the Lord who became the sun, the moon, the wind, and the fire. He resides in Naṛaiyūr and offer worship. Here it is interesting that Naṛaiyūr is supposed to have something which is called desu. Yeah, this is desudei. Here you can see this desudei. This desu, it is probably Sanskrit tejas, which means light, brightness, gold, treasure, beauty, praise, or fame. And that desu, it belongs to the one who was the moon, the sun, the wind, and the fire. This is in the beginning. Tingal erikal senjudarai nam desu. So since God dwells in Naṛaiyūr, the town also has his own characteristics. So that's because the Vishnu is there, the Naṛaiyūr is also rich, beautiful, and famous. It has this desu, which belongs to the Vishnu. And all this happens because of Vishnu presence in the town, of course. In the third stanza, we can, in Rambharati translation, read, O heart, let us go to the Lord, worshipped by sceptred kings, who offer service and praise. Here, he resides in Naṛaiyūr and offer worship. So Naṛaiyūr here is said to belong to our king. It is said, Nang kon Naṛaiyūr. So Naṛaiyūr of our king, our Lord. This is the brilliant or famous place, the Tirumaṅkaiyāḻvār, which was praised, by someone who is called here Valavan. Valavan can mean the conqueror or just a capable man. And that conqueror and that capable man was having the scepter. This is called Senggol Valavan. And that person, that Senggol Valavan, he bowed to Vishnu's feet, because it says that was Tarpaninda Yeti. So this is interesting. Who was that person, this Valavan? And the commentary says that this person who made obeisance to God's feet at that place was some Chora king. I don't know what could be that some Chora king, but the local tradition of Tirunaṛaiyūr says that the temple was built by Champion Kochen Kanan. who is known also as Tirunaṛaiyūr, and he was the king from the Chora dynasty, of course. Tirumaṅkaiyāḻvār mentions his name also in other hymn in 6:6, which the hymn is also devoted to Tirunaṛaiyūr. And it is one of the very few mentions of a historical nature that can be found in the Priya Tirumuli, which in principle is a religious text with a rather, we can say, a historical approach, as most the religious texts are. So this Tirunaṛaiyūr, if he was that Valavan mentioned here, was supposed to live around 3rd century, but we cannot say anything for sure. And he was mentioned in Tamil classical poetry. I don't read Sangam poetry, so I just have to believe that he was mentioned there. Our professors will know better than me if he was really mentioned there. But where he was mentioned for sure is Kalavali Narpadu, which is a post-Sangam poem in 40, yes, Narpadu, 40 stanzas about Kalavali, or the battlefield, which mentions that he defeated the Cheras in the battle of Karumalam. But again, as much as I remember, that name of Karumalam is not mentioned in this Kalavali Narpada. So this is what we know from the tradition and exactly not from the text itself. So here we know that Tirunaṛaiyūr, coming back to the stanza, the Tirunaṛaiyūr is a place, it is Ur, which was praised by this Valavan with the Senkol, whoever he was. Then we go to the 4th stanza, which in Ram Bharati translation reads, "O heart, let us go to the trusted Lord, surrounded by fragrant areca and red golden fruit orchards. He resides in Naṛaiyūr and offer worship." So here we can see that this Naṛaiyūr is said to belong to Namban. Namban is a word meaning young man or the superior person or god. So for sure it is the place of Vishnu. And this place is surrounded by fertile gardens. It is said it is Tirunaṛaiyūr, fruits of which is these gardens are full of fruits. We have kani and other type of areca nuts. It is said here, Sampon, Kamuku, and Nam. So from this stanza, we know actually only about surroundings of Tirunaṛaiyūr. Yeah, all around we can find fertile fields, areca palm groves, and fruit gardens. So the fertility of this place, which is accented here, is of course related to the presence of Vishnu in that town, in that place. Nothing else we know about Tirunaṛaiyūr from this stanza. If we move to the 5th stanza, we will see here the translation of Rambharati, "O heart, let us go to the Lord surrounded by fertile fields and waters where Malanga, Varal, Varley fish dance, and he resides in Naṛaiyūr and offer worship." So we know what we know about Naṛaiyūr from these words, that Naṛaiyūr is surrounded not only by fertile groves that were mentioned earlier, but also by some kind of water bodies or irrigated fields. They are called paivayal. So we can translate like, I don't know, field with the running water or some flowing water, something like that, where different species of fish live. And the poet mentions here 3 kinds of them, Malanga, Varal, and Vale. And it is interesting that the place itself is called to be the one which has something which is named Nalam, or the goodness, but the goodness can mean also beauty. Nalam Kolva Naṛaiyūr, the Naṛaiyūr which has Nalam, something good in it. Again, you can see that not much is said about the place, but again, rather about surroundings, what is around Tirunaṛaiyūr, but not which is what is inside. And we go to the sixth stanza in Rambharati translation. It reads, "O heart, let us go to the Lord who burned the ocean girdle city of Lanka. He resides in Naṛaiyūr and offer worship." So Naṛaiyūr is here called to be the place of good waters, Nanir. Yeah, it is here Nanir Naṛaiyūr. I don't know what it means, good waters, but probably that there are a lot of waters. That's why it is Nanir, because otherwise, what can be the bad water? I don't know. It is also said that this is the town of the one who, with animals, with the Vilanga, set fire to destroy Lanka. Lanka in Malanga, yes, Malanga, Vilanga, Yeriutinan. He set fire, Yeriutinan. And that Lanka was at the ancient sea, Tonir, if I understand properly, old water, ancient sea, something like that. Again, from this stanza, we don't know much about Naṛaiyūr. We only know that it is the place where God lives, and that God here, of course, is a form in the form of Rama, the one who set fire to Lanka. Yes. And then we can proceed to the seventh stanza in Rambharati translation. "O heart, let us go to the Lord surrounded by good Vedic seers who propagate the chants of the four Vedas, and he resides in Naṛaiyūr and offer worship." So Naṛaiyūr here is called to be the place of good men. We have here the phrase Nalar Naṛaiyūr. Nalar, Nalar. This is interesting that the people of Naṛaiyūr are good people. And they are chanting the Ori, they are chanting, and this chanting, they spread in the entire world, yes, Ulahil Nilayavar, the four Vedas. And these four Vedas, this Marinanga, here, Marinanga, these four Vedas are called to be solar. Solar, actually, it means they are full of soul words. Of course, the soul mean not only word, but also sound. So the words or the sounds of Veda are always good. So we have to agree with that. So what we know from this stanza is that the Tirunaṛaiyūr is the place where learned Brahmins reside, because this Nalar by no means are Brahmins, because no other people can recite the Vedas. Yes, so they chant these four Vedas, and that brings prosperity to the world. Yes, this is called. Yeah, so this is what we know about the Naṛaiyūr, that the Brahmins live there. And if we go to the next stanza, in Rambharati translation, we read, "O heart, let us go to the Lord, surrounded by endless festivities, sacrifices all the year round. He resides in Naṛaiyūr and offer worship." So according to this stanza, we know that Velvu, the sacrifices and festivities, this Veravu, they never cease in the streets of Tirunaṛaiyūr. That is called Yendromaradaur. So the place where it never stops, something like that. So we can say that city is bustling with life, and people celebrate and constantly make sacrifices. Every day they worship Vishnu, because people here are busy, of course, with the worship of Vishnu, nothing else. So perhaps it is also worth mentioning here that in the temple of Vishnu in Srirangam, which is the most important temple for the Sri Vaishnavas, religious festivals are celebrated nowadays almost every year. So more than 300 days in a year, there are days of different religious festivals in Srirangam. So we may say that Tirunaṛaiyūr is not inferior to Srirangam in this respect. And Tirumaṅkaiyāḻvār is also associated somehow with Srirangam, because he lived there for a few years and he was responsible for the renovation works done there. And we go to the last stanza, which reads in Rambharati translation, "O heart, let us go to the Lord, who rid the moon of his curse of waning he resides in Naṛaiyūr and offer worship. So the Tirunaṛaiyūr is described here as a great, eminent, large. This is what Nani Sera. This Nani can mean greatness, intensiveness, abundance. So it is a great place of the one who released with the Tanedum, the white moon in the sky from the ascending node core. This is in mythology when the situation when Rahu was absorbing absorbing the moon during the eclipse time, and Vishnu just helped the moon to survive. So, as you see from the stanza, also not much is known about Tirunaṛaiyūr. It is just the place of the Vishnu and nothing else. Okay, we don't have time for reading more, so I will not start another hymn, next hymn. But what I can say what we can say about the place. I was wondering why Tirumaṅkaiyāḻvār has devoted 10 hymns to this place. And I expected that there is some information can be found in his words. But as you can see, we don't even know how this Tirunaṛaiyūr looked like. We don't know whether it was a town or city or a village, or maybe it was just a place, or maybe a temple, or maybe a place just without, we don't know whether there were some buildings or not. No mention is done about the streets or houses or whatever, temples or whatever is there. So exactly, if it is the most described, the most mentioned place in Periya Tirumoli, actually we don't know nothing about it when we read the Naṛaiyūr stanzas about Naṛaiyūr. So most probably these stanzas are not about Naṛaiyūr, but of course they are first of all about the Vishnu who is Naṛaiyūr itself. The Naṛaiyūr is a Vishnu body, like that. We know only that there are good people living there, and we know about the surroundings of the city, which is fertile fields and the groves and the forests with the fruits and fishes living in there. And there's also what is more important is that the city or the place, because we don't know it was city, town, or place, was surrounded with a lot of waters, which made the place to be fertile. So that's all, I think, because my time is over. So I will not take your time. This is just, I wanted to share with you this my observation, that I expected to know how this Naṛaiyūr looked like, why it was so important for Mange that he was describing him in 10 hymns, whereas the other temple he mentioned in 1, 2, 3 only, but he is saying about this Tirunaṛaiyūr in 10s. But actually, not much I got from that. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Wozniak. Indeed, time is almost over. I just want to give you one piece of information. There is a translation of Periya Tirumoli, which is about to be published, namely by in the Pondicherry series by Lynn 8, who already has published the smaller
short works. Yes,
exactly, and the larger one are coming hopefully next year, and that is an excellent.
Then we will. Then no more Ram Bharati translation. I will mention.
Anybody with a brief question?
Yeah, I just want to greet Vanakkam Wozniak.
Vanakkam sir.
I am Professor Nachumuthu. I think you are now moved from modern literature to the Bhakti themes. Very good, congratulations. I think you have taken the Vaishnava literature. I just want to point out one observation regarding the name. It is Tirunaṛaiyūr, not Tirunaṛaiyūr.
Yes.
You have been repeatedly telling Tirunaṛaiyūr. Tirunaṛaiyūr is another place near.
This is the Polish way of accenting words on the end.
Tirunaṛaiyūr,
fragrance.
Tirunaṛaiyūr is another place near Chidambaram. It is a celebrated place for both Radhamunigal and also the Nambiyandar Nambi. So regarding one question, one point, Tirumangai has he lived, he rolled over the place around Chirgali, and so he's familiar with the Chola country, and especially he sings many pasurams in the Chola country. For example, Tirunaṛaiyūr is now called Nachiyar Koil. It is a very fertile place. It is in the suburb of Kumbakonam now. Kumbakonam. So it's on the banks of Kaveri.
Yes.
And it's so fertile. Now the brass industry is the main.
The lamps of Naṛaiyūr.
Naṛaiyūr. Not Naṛaiyūr. Naṛaiyūr. Naṛaiyūr.
Okay, very